Sports Fantasies with Miller and McCarty.
Welcome back, Sports Fantasies with Miller and McCarty. Episode 1, I guess, of the remake.
Yes,
Here
sir.
we go with some fantasy baseball dynasty rankings. Little top 10 action, back and forth mock draft style, so each of us given 5. And we might touch on some honorable mentions, as well as talk about who we believe are the top 3 prospects when it comes to fantasy at each of these positions.
That's right. It's never too early for baseball, Miller. The winter meetings are over. We're gearing up towards spring training. It's time to get some of those dynasty rankings out there.
I did see something today that there's still like 60% of the free agents are still available. And I believe of the 60%, 58% of them are Scott Boras clients. So
That sounds about right. Makes sense.
All right, so we're going to jump into first base first, mostly because you hate catchers and didn't even want to do them. I made you. But
yes, I tried to veto that, but it didn't work.
So I'll let you start off here with the first baseman. Who is the number 1 pick in the Miller McCarty Sports Fantasies first base mock draft?
And just a little disclaimer, the way you and I looked at this was basically whatever position they played the most last season, that's kind of where we stuck people. We know some players have crossover at different positions, but that's how we looked at it. So first for me, even in a dynasty league, this guy is still my first baseman off the board, Bryce Harper, 31 years old. Slow start coming off the injury last year, but then he turned it on with 23 homers in the final 79 games. I think he'll be doing what he does until he's late 30s. So even in a dynasty league, you're getting a good 6-7 years of pretty elite production, I believe, from Harper.
I absolutely agree with you. I'm a little surprised you went there. I thought you were going to go somewhere else with the first pick, but that's all right. That means I get the guy at number 2, and that's Matt Olsen. Kind of the same thing as Harper. He's a little bit older, right around that 30 mark, but I believe he is going to be just fine into his late 30s. Hits for a high average, hits home runs and doubles. So in most fantasy formats, you're getting points or categories either way from him, multiple categories. So
yeah, it's a good thing to point out too. Of course, you and I play a lot of more points leagues than we do categories, so that's going to alter the rankings a little bit. I think they're still primarily the same at most positions, but if you are in a categories league, it looks a little bit different. I had Olsen at 2 as well. I think last year was a career year, but with that said, he's a long-term deal in Atlanta. He's going to be hitting 40 home runs every year there. Career high last year in barrel percentage, exit velocity, hard hit percentage. So he's ready to roll. My number 3 then, again, Dynasty League. This one was tricky for me because he's a little bit on the older side in terms of baseball years, but the guy still plays elite. It's Freddie Freeman, 34 years old. Only question again is, how long are you going to get him at that for? Another 3, 4, 5 years at best, probably. Not showing a decline right now, so I'm still good at taking him at 3, especially if you're a team that wants to compete over the next couple of seasons.
You like Freeman a little more than me when it comes to Dynasty, but that's all right. That means that I get my number 3 guy at number 4. That's none other than Mr. Pete Alonso, and another guy who's just consistent, hits for a decent average, not as high as Olsen or Harper. Hits home runs, hits doubles, walks. Might actually be walking more this upcoming year. That lineup isn't overly good, which might see a drop in RBI for him. But I like Alonso a lot, especially getting him at 4. I would have taken him at 3. So back to you, sir.
Yeah, I can't blame you there. He would have been my 4th. And I think he took a big hit in batting average last year. I think that bounces back a little bit this year. So to me, the top 4 were kind of in their own tier. And then my next guy, where are we at? 5 now? I would take Vladimir Guerrero here, obviously younger, 25. look, I don't ever see a repeat of that MVP type season. Well, half those games were played at a AAA park right in Buffalo.
Yeah, Buffalo.
When he had those big numbers. So other than that season, he's been very good, but not elite. I still think there's some potential to produce more than he has, and I think he has a really safe floor. Just don't be expecting that MVP type elite season. I don't see that again, but at 25, I'll still gladly take him as the 5th overall.
Yeah, I can't fault you there. There's actually a guy that I like a little bit more than Vlad Jr., and that's Tristan Casus from the Red Sox.
Okay.
I believe this kid is going to be elite. I think he's going to be more consistent than Vlad. I think you're talking about a guy that's going to hit for a decent average and probably a lot of doubles. The home runs might come eventually. I don't know if he's going to come out hitting 40 or 50 home runs a year right away. That could happen later in his year. He's a guy that's, I think, 23 or 24. So, and Boston is typically going to spend money and put talent up and down that lineup. Right now, they're kind of going through a little bit of a rebuild, but I don't believe that will last for too long. So I like Casas quite a bit.
Yeah, he didn't make my list, but I can see why he would make a list. He definitely has a lot of potential there, like you said. So then I guess coming in at number 7, I still got faith in this guy. Maybe I shouldn't, but Spencer Torkelson, still just 24 years old. I don't know that he turns into be what people thought he was going to be as the first overall pick, but I still think the potential is there for a breakout, and I think we see it this year. Final 48 games last season, 16 home runs, has a great hard hit percentage, barrel percentage. So at some point, I think he's going to start putting up big numbers, and if he does what I think he's going to do this year, I think next year when we're doing this, we're putting him closer to the top 3.
I have Torkelson on my list as well, so I don't think that's a bad place to go. Next guy's been up and down throughout his career. We have both dealt with this guy, both our favorite teams, and that's Cody Bellinger, who's one of those Borders clients who is still a free agent. He's still just 28 years old. When he's on. He hits home runs, he hits doubles, he steals bases, gets RBI. So I believe Bellinger is a guy that's still worthy of a top 10 dynasty pick, and should come off people's draft boards. I mean, not as early as some of the guys we mentioned before, but I would still say fairly early when it comes to the first baseman.
Yeah, I have him around the same spot. He's just a frustrating player. I think obviously he's got a pretty high ceiling when he's playing well. The problem with him is his floor, because his floor is very low. There's no such thing as a safe floor with Bellinger, so it's a risk, but he can definitely put up numbers. All right, number 9 for me. I think at this point here, I don't have anybody left that I love, so I'd take a flyer on a guy like Christian Encarnacion Strand out of Cincinnati. Young guy, hits the ball well, should get be an everyday player this year, I believe. And look, anybody that's playing at that Reds ballpark, I'm willing to take a flyer on.
That makes a bunch of sense. He just missed my list here. So I believe that brings us to pick number 10. And for pick number 10, I'm going to take Nate Lau, guy in a good lineup in Texas who's going to get opportunities. Still a fairly young man. I believe he's 26. Doubles, home runs, RBI. Averages a little up and down, which you see from some of the younger guys. But you mentioned that we do the points leagues. He's consistently going to be, I think, a 3.6 to 4 point per game guy, depending on the season. Probably settling around 3.8, which in our league is a above average player at most times. So I took Nate Lau here at number 10.
Very nice.
That's 10.
Did you have anyone that was on your list that didn't get drafted?
I didn't know. We maxed out my list.
The only person that I had mentioned I actually had him in the 10th spot on my list that didn't get talked about was Andrew Vaughn. at one point he was another one of those huge prospects
Oof.
everyone talks about. He's still young. He's 25 years old. He's going to get a chance to play every day with the White Sox. So I believe he's worth a late round flyer. And when you're talking about Dynasty at 25, could still produce for the next 12, 15 years.
I've lost all faith in Andrew Vaughn, but I get that there is still some untapped potential there.
Yeah, I would say he's kind of Torkelson before Torkelson, right? I mean,
yeah.
All right. What
I'll
about
give you
your three prospects here? We can go ping pong style back and forth here. Who is the first prospect you want to talk about?
That's fine. The first one I had up, Xavier Isaac for the Rays, only 20 years old, single A last season as a 19-year-old, crushed it. And all the projections I see are basically 30-plus home runs. Not a big speed guy, so not going to give you a ton of steals. But when I look at prospects, those are the two things I'm kind of looking for, is either speed or home run. And if you can get both of them, that's great. But 30-plus home run potential guys are pretty big for me, so that's where I'm starting.
First place I started here at first base is Bryce Eldridge from the San Francisco Giants. He's intriguing because not only does he hit the ball very well for a lot of power, probably he projects to be a 35 to 45 home run a year guy, but he also can pitch. And although his last year in college, he didn't pitch a ton. He only threw a couple innings. He has the capability to hit and pitch, and most people think that's going to translate to the major league level. So I had Eldridge as my top first base prospect. Where'd you go next?
An Orioles first baseman, Kobe Mayo. They list him at a lot of positions. I threw him at first, but
they do. Yes.
29 home runs at AAA last season. Again, not a ton of speed, but if he keeps tapping into that power, you're looking at a 35 to 40 home run guy potentially at some point with a decent average. He has a good hit tool, so he's not going to be a 190 hitter. He's going to get on base otherwise as well.
My next prospect was Kyle Manzardo from the Guardians. He's another guy who's been mentioned on several prospects lists over the last couple of years. I think he's due to break out. I think the Guardians is a good spot for him. I think he'll have opportunity there, and that ballpark tends to play well for hitters, especially power hitters. So I think Manzardo could be a guy to keep an eye on.
Fair enough. My last one, I went another Oriole first baseman, so I don't know which one's going to pan out. This is actually a little bit older for prospect. It's Heston Kjerstad. He's 25. He's a former second overall pick. A couple years ago, he had a heart issue that took him out of the game for a year or two. But he's been working his way back up. Pretty low buy right now, maybe even available in some of your leagues as a free agent. And like I said, playing time may be the concern there. But with all that said, he is a buy low guy for me. Last year between AA and AAA, hit 303, 21 homers, 5 steals. And again, as a former second overall pick, he's obviously got the tools. He's just kind of late to the game because of some health issues.
The last guy I mentioned here is a guy that we actually talked about frequently during the season. I believe it was last year, and that's Nolan Fontana from the Angels. I know I just butchered his last name. The reason we talked about Nolan so much is because he was drafted and immediately got to play with the Angels, so everyone kept picking him up, and then I was forced to go in and drop him, and people would pick him up, and then I would have to drop him. It was a pain in the butt, but I like his potential. The problem is that he's on the Angels, so he'll probably be terrible until he goes somewhere else.
Angels, very good hitter. He's going to have to develop some power, to really be
especially
a big time
as a first baseman. Yeah,
to be a big time player. He's got some steals. He'll get on base for sure. But yeah, if he can get into that power, I like him a lot too.
All right, that wraps up our first baseman.
Knocked out first base. So yeah, we'll be doing this with all positions. So just be on the lookout for Dynasty rankings at all positions, even including catcher for some reason that my co-host really wanted to get into.
I mean, catcher is one of the 9 positions. Every fantasy league that I've ever been in uses catchers. Some of them actually use 2 because
That's
it's so
insane.
important.
It's insanity. If you're in a 2-catcher league, leave immediately. You don't want any parts of that.
Breaking news. This new league that we're getting ready to start might have 2 catchers. No, I'm kidding.
Okay. I'm out. All right. That's it. We're out of here.
That's all. See you next time.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Sports Fantasies with Miller and McCarty. And be sure to catch future shows wherever you stream.
Bye-bye now.